John and Ed, they're on patrol, chasing shadows, heart and soul. Cryptid hunter UFO, down this rabbit hole they go. In the woods and on the street, whispers follow their heartbeat. Alien eyes, giant's feet, all got shadows they all meet. Down the rabbit hole they dive, midnight secrets start to thrive. Mysteries keep them alive. In the dark, does truth survive? Haunted houses, midnight calls, endless echoes in the halls. Ghostly murmurs, secret falls, every clue, they chase them all. Whispers follow their heartbeat. Alien eyes, giant's feet, all got shadows they all meet. Down the rabbit hole they dive, midnight secrets start to thrive. Mysteries keep them alive. In the dark, does truth survive? Haunting walls, they've got the key. Hidden fears, they set them free. Cryptid hunter, you and me, down this rabbit hole, let's see. Unseen worlds, they've got the key. Hidden fears, they set them free. Cryptid hunter, you and me, down this rabbit hole, let's see.
And we're up. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, John. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Good to see you. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Well, like six days. You can't have missed me that much.
I kind of do.
Oh, God.
I like our little chats.
Yeah, I enjoy our little chats as well.
It's different when you're doing it on your own, you know, when you're sitting here talking to the camera or you're not really talking to the camera because I think we come across quite naturally now, you know. We've kind of got a polished delivery. But yeah, it's different when you're sitting talking to the camera, but you're really just talking to the people at the other end and you don't get any feedback because the chat's never quick enough, you know.
No, and it also, the chat makes you lose your train of thought as well.
Yeah, it does. So I'm on the blush again. I'm sticking with the blush this summer. It's one
of my favourite reds. I can't show it to you because it's reversed, but it's from First Cape.
It's from your neck of the woods, Fairbank. Sauvignon Blanc of South Africa. It's a rosé from South Africa.
Okay, yeah, I'm on South African red.
Western Cape.
Yep, same as mine.
Well, there you go.
Mine is First Cape. So yeah, it's also Western Cape.
Cool.
Merlot.
Cool. Right. Good evening, chat room. Good evening. Ed is in the room and in the chat. Yep. Nactaridus, Julie, Shalini, Dreadeye, Ray. What's Ray up to? Fix a sinus that blocks every time I lie down. Yeah, you could try. Have you ever tried that thing where you put Vic in a bowl of water and put a tea towel over your head? You ever done that? It works.
Vicks Vapor Rub.
Yeah, Vicks Vapor Rub. Put a blob of it in the hot water.
Or tea tree oil.
Or whatever, and put the thing on so as you're breathing it in, inhaling it. Or eucalyptus oil. Eucalyptus oil's good as well. That'll clear your sizes, mate. That'll clear them right out. Right.
Oh dear.
Right. Okay, so tonight we are going to go through the top 10 worst years ever. And what we're going to do is a little bit different. We're going to go, we're going to put forward our own top 10s and kind of justify, and we'll take it in turns. We'll just go, hello, Van, and we'll just go one after the other. So, shall I kick off? Shall I? Should I kick off?
Well, absolutely. Kick it off.
I'm going to kick off. I'm going to kick off with number 10. My number 10 for the top 10 worst years ever. And I think this one might surprise you, Ed. 1929.
What? Because of the crash?
Well, yeah, I think because of the crash and because of everything that happened within that kind of 5-year period, because you had the crash, the depression, the Dust Bowl, the famine in the Midwest, farmers going out of business.
It's bad. I mean, in terms of the number of people impacted and also the levels of misery, because it's one thing. It's one thing for a whole load of people to die. That's horrible. People die in a war, but when you immiserate an entire generation, pretty much, because it impacted everywhere in the world, certainly everywhere in the Western world, but obviously the worst in America. I could see why you would have that at number 10. That's not actually that surprising.
There you go. So, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is 2004.
2004. Well,
yes.
that I don't. Right, I'll tell you. I'm going to take a note of yours as well. 2004. Right, and that's one I don't have. So go on.
Well, the reason for that is the Indian Ocean tsunami.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, it's probably one of the worst natural disasters that's happened in my life. That, I mean, I wasn't directly involved with it, but I mean, the scale of what happened just never ceases to blow my mind. And it was also because there was lots of video as well.
Yeah, there was.
One of those ones because you've got tourists on holiday in Thailand.
It could have happened at a worse time. The day after Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely, and then also Fukushima.
Yeah.
Oh no, hang on. Fukushima's different. No, shut up. Listen, don't.
No, that was a different tsunami.
Yeah, I know. Being an idiot. Just ignore me. But yeah, so I think personally 1929 is a good choice. I don't actually have that one on my list at all. I do have some economically related ones, but not that one.
Okay, cool. Right, I don't know how we're going to come up with a definitive list. Maybe we'll run through them all and then we can juggle it around,
Yeah, I think we should also see. We should wait to get to the end, because if there are any that we somehow manage to agree with each other on, then they should potentially have a higher spot on the list.
Indeed, good call. Good call. Higher, a heavier weighting, perhaps. Anyway. Number 9 for me, and I think this one might surprise you as well, is 1969.
What happened in 1969?
Well, we landed.
Lots of things.
We allegedly landed on the moon. We also had. Did we not have the 2 assassinations of Bobby Kennedy, and who was the other guy? Martin Luther King. Yeah. So
that was a bad year.
Yeah, I think it was a bad year, and also there was a couple other things happened. One, we really got into Vietnam, or the Americans did, And I think that was just. I think Vietnam was the start of the end for American economy. I think it's where they when the whole thing. Vietnam was just a shit show from beginning to end, right? And yeah, I could have picked Saigon, but this year in particular was the kickoff for so many different things. And the other thing that happened in 1969 was we allegedly landed on the moon.
Yep. And for anyone interested, see our previous rabbit hole.
Indeed. Nice,
see, I can
nice
do
plug.
it too.
Nice plug. But yeah, so yeah, I think 1969 was a bit of a shit show, and
I think and I understand what you mean about it being the end of the beginning of the end of American hegemony, because it was the Vietnam War that forced the US to go off the gold standard and create the petrodollar.
Yep.
And if they'd stayed on the gold standard and managed their money a bit more responsibly, then large amounts of nastiness that's on its way to us now wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have been required, would it?
And 2008 wouldn't have happened. And
yep.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you on that
and
one.
Probably the Gulf. In fact, even there wouldn't have been any real need to remove Gaddafi from Libya. So the whole North Africa situation might be a bit more stable than it is just now, where you have literally hordes of people pouring across into Europe. And
which is exactly what Gaddafi said would happen.
he did, and then there wouldn't have been any justification for Saddam either, So I think a lot kicked off in this year, and really, and the other thing that's strange is 1974, which is when, and that's not one of my years, but 1974, when America pulled out of Vietnam, which was another shit show. That was the last year we went to the moon as well. So every year we went to the moon, America was in Vietnam. And as soon as they came out of Vietnam, we stopped going to the moon, because there was 3 more missions to go, and they were cancelled, weren't they?
Yeah, and I've ever since we did that, because it was that rabbit hole that basically, and until I did the research for that, I thought that we'd gone to the moon. I didn't question that.
Yeah,
and that researching that rabbit hole made me question it like hell, and I'm totally unconvinced now. And the fact that the moon landing missions ended at the same time as the Vietnam War, to me, how do we know that those missions even happened and they weren't just funneling all that bloody money into the military? Because it was a good way to get extra money to fund their nefarious activities.
Yeah,
I mean, my number 9 is kind of it's on a much smaller scale.
Yeah,
because I mean, there's stuff that happened. It's 1954, and I've put that down because that was the date of the very first Bilderberg meeting.
Oh, nice.
And I think those Bilderberg meetings. I mean, people talk about Davos and the WEF, but to my mind, they're just the front men. They're like Klaus Schwab is the ringmaster in the WEF circus, but the real stuff going on behind the curtain is Bilderberg.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's where you see so many politicians that get anointed. It's like Bill Clinton never goes to Bilderberg. Goes to Bilderberg, next year he's elected president.
Yeah.
And also the people who set it up, people like Prince Bernhard, who is the wife of the current Dutch king's grandmother, Juliana. And he basically was in Hitler Youth. I mean, there was all sorts of he was mired in scandal for most of his life as well. There was a whole thing about Lockheed and kickbacks, and he started the Bilderberg along with I think it was the Duke of Edinburgh, and also people like Henry Kissinger. Obviously they didn't think of the idea, but there's people like Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller who were behind that whole thing as a way of kind of getting it's essentially the Bilderberg meetings are about the Europeans and Americans getting together and agreeing on issues, and it's the format of the meetings, the secrecy. everything else. And I think that they're a little known but really significant group. So that's why I put 1954 down.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Right, so I'm going to quickly say hello to the people in the chat that we didn't get the first time around because more have dropped in. Brit Mate, Spooky Cat, Espresso Mechanic, Super Lisa Liss. That's a new name. I've not seen that one before. DW, yep. And Artifact in Reality. Harold, good to see you.
It's nice when we have new viewers. Welcome.
Indeed it is. Good evening, Super Lisa Liss. I'd like that. Right, where was I? My number 8. Right, so for those that have joined late, we're doing the top 10 worst years to be alive ever. I'm doing my top 10, Ed's doing his top 10, and then we'll have a kind of bat it around and see where the consensus goes once we've got to the end of it. So my number 8, and I'm going back now. I'm going back, okay? My number 8 is 48 BC.
Crying out loud. How the hell do you even know what happened in 48 BC? There was no newspapers back then.
Right, okay. There's a couple. There's a couple of things, and there are a kind of conflicting circumstances around it, but the first one that kind of is acknowledged is 48 BC. The Royal Library of Alexandria was burned to the ground by Julius Caesar.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I think that sir just has to be up there in anyone's list of a fucking bad year.
Yeah, you have to agree with that, because that was just tragedy. I mean, the amount of pre-flood knowledge that may have been in there, and the kind some of the documents that are described as being in there by people who were there, just makes you. I mean, humans are so stupid.
See, they are indeed, because Harold's just said it didn't affect me that much. Well, you'll never know, Harold, will you? Because where could we be today if that knowledge had continued on? That might have given us a massive head start on technology, on what's happened, and we might never have had the Dark Ages.
Well, it's also it's not, the thing for me is that it's not just the actual destruction of the library and all of that that priceless knowledge. It's also the attitude of people who would do something like that, and
to be fair,
to me is what it really represents, because we've still got people like that in this world today.
Well, we do. You're right. But to be fair, I believe Julius Caesar's main intention was just to burn down the harbour and the ships in it, but it kind of got out of hand.
Oh, fuck's sake. Well, at least it wasn't someone having a freaking barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh, dear, sorry. Oh, come on. But I think there were multiple incarnations of, I mean, Nectaridus in the chat might be able to tell me, but weren't there different libraries of Alexandria? Well,
there's another one in 2036. It's meant to have been destroyed as well by, I think, was it? Oh, I can't remember. Was it the invading Mongol hordes or something? But yeah, there are quite a few. But I had to pick a year, so I went with 48 BC because it sounded cool. Could you get Julius Caesar and Cleopatra?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good one. That was one I didn't think of. My number 8 was 1947, which is the year that Harry Truman signed the National Security Act, which created the American deep state, effectively the CIA, and all of its associated nightmarish kind of things. It gave people like Alan Dulles
I was going to say
ridiculous amounts of power.
I was going to say, and Roswell,
and Roswell as well.
Yeah.
Although with that, I
think that's inconsequential for the worst years of the world, but the other stuff,
I was thinking, I mean, because obviously trying to make a list like this is really bloody difficult because there's all sorts of bad shit happen. So I think you and I approached it in a similar way, and we're looking at it from the perspective of what we think when events happened that had the most ramifications and
Yeah.
echoed. Because I mean, the creation of the U.S. National Security Act, it's echoed through history like a freaking bell. I mean, and we're still dealing with it to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Now, having said that, my next three are all old school, right? So
How much? Your last one was what, 46 BC?
48 BC, yeah.
48 BC. How much were we going back to ancient
Oh
Sumeria or something?
no, we're not doing bad now. We're going back to 1816, right? The year without a summer, right?
Right.
So this was the year, and I think Mount Tambora was meant to have erupted.
Mm-hmm.
The largest volcanic eruption on the planet in the last 10,000 years, right? The weather had already started to cool by the time this happened, right? And although we don't know exactly what happened, but I think the volcano's got a lot to do with it. The temperature, the global average temperature, dropped by 2.5 degrees centigrade in a year.
That's some serious global cooling. Was that that wasn't the Maunder minimum, was it?
It was kind of the no. It was the start of the. It would be the start of the ice fields and things. The Wonder minimums later on.
Right.
In fact, I don't have the Wonder minimum. I think I took that out because I think the Wonder minimum was around about 1600s, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it depends on the type of volcano, because we had the Tonga eruption about 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually influenced global temperatures, but it made them spike.
Yeah.
Because the biggest greenhouse gas in the atmosphere is water vapor.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the Tonga eruption chucked something like 5 billion liters or whatever of water into the atmosphere. I mean, it's an utterly absurd amount.
Yeah.
And because of the way that the planet works and the climate works, it takes a couple of years for that impact to actually be felt in terms of
Yeah.
temperature. And I've wondered if it's not potentially impacting the insane amounts of rainfall. I mean, I know. Well, I personally am convinced that there is geoengineering going on and all sorts of stuff. And when humans start mucking around with things like weather, you just know it's going to go wrong. I mean, there was that incident in the UK decades ago where they were first experimenting with cloud seeding, and they nearly drowned an entire bloody village in Cornwall or somewhere, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was Cornwall or Wales, because the government would always choose some little backwater part of the country where they don't give a shit about. I mean, they don't give a shit about anyone, but they really don't give a shit about those little backwater places. And it's the same with Dubai. There was, I mean, I'm not sure about the recent floods, but there was Australia where they had floods, and there's actually
Dubai
TV
was cloud
interviews.
seeding, weren't they?
Yeah,
They kind of admitted it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, can I finish my year? Right. So
yeah, of course you can. Sorry.
So because of that massive temperature, that New England, the crop failure caused by the cooling resulted in the bulk of farmers moving west. Right. In Europe, the abnormally cold summer led to a widespread failure of the potato crop, right, resulting in famine, one of the worst typhus outbreaks in history. Sporadic incidents of rebellions and food riots in other European countries. And the dark and gloomy vibe of the year has since been immortalised in quite a few literary works. The setting of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for example, which was penned while she was on holiday in a very dark and gloomy Switzerland.
That must have been such a shit holiday.
Yeah, well, hey, but she wrote a fucking cracking story out of it, didn't she?
Well, yeah, but I mean, well, I don't know what kind of demons you must have to excise from your consciousness to write something like Frankenstein's monster.
When you've got Lord Byron Shelley shagging you, you know, then you probably got a few demons, all right.
Oh dear, yeah, you've probably got more than a few.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick. of a year, definitely. My number 7 was it? We on 7? Yeah.
Yeah, we're on 7.
1346, which is
Ooh, 1346.
the Black Death,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
okay.
the worst, and it's I, the official explanation is that it was fleas on the backs of rats that spread the bubonic plague, as they call it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not convinced about germ theory, so I wonder if there wasn't another explanation. And this, I mean, this, I'm not talking about super stuff like witchcraft or anything like that, but I'm just wondering if there
Oh,
wasn't
well,
some sort of
there's the theory that it was the Mongols that caused it, because they were in the habit of throwing rotting cows and things into play. They were in their massive expansion period and fighting people and all that. And there was that theory about the Mongols throwing cows into encampments of other people and creating some kind of weird, weird. What would you call it? Have you got seagulls outside? No.
no.
I'm hearing a funny whine. Anybody else hearing it? No. Maybe just me. So yeah, there is a theory that maybe the Mongols caused it, but yeah, that's a good year to pick.
It's possible. I mean, that was like 50% of Europe's population died.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some estimates are even more than that, because you pretty much nearly wiped out the population of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear
I mean,
that?
still...
Can you hear that, Brit mate? That banshee type noise. That's weird. I don't know what's
Banshee,
causing it.
John. Is it my end or your end? Because I don't hear
No,
anything.
it seems to be when
you.
It seemed to be when I was speaking, but it seems to have gone away. Strange.
Weird.
Right.
Gremlins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that because back, I mean, in 1346, medical care was rubbish. And I mean, some of the gruesome images that you get, it's like there's plague doctors with with the big pointy masks.
Yeah.
Because they thought that the plague was caused by, what do they call it? Humors or something that they couldn't
vapors.
breathe in.
Yeah.
They couldn't breathe the same air as plague infected patients, and like plague pits still being unearthed that are just full of skeletons and stuff like that. So, I mean, I would not have liked to be alive in 1346, I have to say.
Oh. Right. My number 6. So my number 6 is 1315. Okay. No, this isn't.
13.
It's
okay.
not. It's not a terribly popular one, but it was probably the worst famine in European history in terms of the amount of the population affected, and it was triggered by torrential, almost biblical quantity rain and floods across the continent that severely affected food production and transport.
Well, I mean, we're seeing a little bit of that at the moment.
So
kind of thing.
The famine's worst effects were felt by what is now the UK, France, and Germany, and estimates vary, but records suggest that anywhere from 10 to 25% of the continent's population was directly reduced because of the famine. And another 10 to 15% of the population succumbed to diseases such as pneumonia, bronchitis, and tuberculosis caused by severe malnutrition.
What so far the 1300s are really not a good century.
Yeah, 1300s was a shit time to be alive. It really was.
Because you have those floods.
Yeah.
And then you have the Black Death like 30 years later. Or 20 years later. No, 30 years later. And it makes you wonder if there's not some sort of connection.
Hold on a minute. The new person in the chat is having a go at me. Has John any years he lived through? Ha ha ha. That's charming, that is. I'll have you know that I lived through 1969, yeah. But anyway, right. There are that's the only one on my list that I lived through. and I've none on not oh in 2004 was on Ed's list, so I lived through that one, but most of us have. Right, sorry about that, Ed. Right, carry on.
No, it's fine. As long as you don't continue berating the audience, we'll be all right.
Hey, they love it. They love it. They love a little banter, don't you? A little bit of banter. Oh
Right,
God, that's here.
Oh dear. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so my next one.
Yeah, number 6 is
1694.
Oh, 16.
Which is the creation of the Bank of England, and the Bank of England significantly was the world's first private central bank.
Yep.
And now we have almost exclusively private central banks, apart from the countries that we're at war with or about to be at war with, i.e. Russia, Iran, places like that.
Yep.
I was actually going to, one of the things that I had on my list before I revised the list earlier was actually also, and I've forgotten what year it was, but it was the birth of Maya Angelou Rothschild, and thus founding of the Rothschild dynasty, which I think is a pretty bad year, really, for everybody. But the creation of the Bank of England is kind of the same thing, because that's where the whole country essentially became debt slaves.
Yeah.
And
good choice. Good choice.
I mean, yeah, and I don't know. I mean, people will say, "Oh, the Bank of England does good things." It doesn't. It's just not. The fact that we have a private central bank is one of the biggest problems facing the country, because it relates to money creation and who controls that money, and the fact that the country has to borrow its own bloody money.
Yeah.
Which is just utterly absurd when you think about it. And I see that again as it's another one of those events that echoes through time, because it has so many ramifications in terms of just the other events that it triggers. It's like wars, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that the First World War started not long after the creation of the Federal Reserve, for example. And I suspect that those two events were connected somehow. And yeah, so that was, Bank of England, no.
Okay. Number 5. Yeah.
Yep, I think we're on number 5.
So number 5, I'm going with 536. So
530. So that wasn't the Council of Nicaea.
No, it wasn't. It was a mysterious fog.
No, that
right?
was 346.
It was a mysterious fog that plunged Europe, the Middle East, large parts of Asia, including China, right, into a continuous, cold era that was the coldest for the last 2,500 years. Right, so we think it may have been caused by a massive eruption of a volcano in Iceland, of all places.
Okay.
Which is, so the
has been known to happen.
It definitely has. The period was marked by a summer frost and snow across China and other parts of Asia, causing abysmally low yields and diseases, as well as widespread famine in European regions like Ireland. No potatoes for you. Right.
No potatoes for you. Oh, you're such a bastard sometimes.
and then I mean, it kind of rolled on, and the
poor Irish people.
What happened after that was the Justinian plague, which was the first incidence of the bubonic plague. Not as bad as the 1346 version, but an earlier outbreak of it. So I think it was a pretty bad year all in all, and I think this is the one where there were like incidences of cannibalism and people snatching children and using them for food. Because I think, was it Hansel and Gretel came around about this time? No, not Hansel and Gretel was a later one. That was a later one. That might have been my 1816 one. Hansel and Gretel would have been the 1816 one, I think, where
Well, isn't Hansel and Gretel all about adrenochrome?
no, I think it's about eating kids for food because people were just that hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wrong.
Anyway, I know. No, we probably didn't have potatoes in 536. Right, what's your number 5? We're halfway there, and
Mine,
we're at 31 minutes. My God, we're almost on time.
yeah. Well, my number 5 is probably going to be a bit controversial, but it's 1948, which is the year that the State of Israel was created, which I personally think was catastrophic.
But nobody talks about the state of Pakistan. Similar
Well,
circumstances, carved off a bit of India, made a new state in 1947, 48, and called it Pakistan.
Bangladesh. Yeah, well, and then a few years later you had Bangladesh as well,
Yeah.
which is now.
But nobody
having
asks
problems
for.
again.
Nobody's asking for Pakistan back.
Well, no, because it's kind of different. But again, it's an example of the British giving people's land away that they had no bloody right to give away. I mean, what the
you
hell?
know what? Yeah, I know you say that, right? But that kind of makes a mockery of everything America's done over the last 100 years.
Well, yeah, and the problem with that is precisely what?
I have no problem with that, mate. I'm doing devil's advocate.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, that's pretty devilish. Well, yeah, just Native Americans, duh. But yeah, I just think that given and the consequences of that event are still being felt, and the world. I mean, the world is.
I never said anything about.
Tinderbox.
Hold on a minute, Johnny John's having a go at me. I never said anything about Bangladesh.
No,
it wasn't me that brought Bangladesh up.
No,
so
I talked about Bangladesh.
Yeah, so butt out.
Yeah.
I'll get you put on a timeout. I'll put you on a timeout.
We need to get moderators.
We'll get 2 moderators on there today. We've got Shalini and Julie. Right.
Yeah. So personally, I think that was not. I think the world would have been a better place if that hadn't happened. And I do agree that people needed somewhere to live after the Second World War, but there could have been different ways to do it that didn't involve lots of dead people.
The Middle East is a complete and utter freaking shit show.
And it's just getting worse.
It always has been, mate. It always has been.
It's like for the last week and a half or so, I've been going to bed pretty much every night wondering if bloody World War III will have started by the time I wake up. And it's just randomly checking Twitter's newsfeed just to see if they started seriously going majorly kinetic. I mean, it's
well. I mean, apparently our I saw your tweet on Twitter about our politicians wanting us to unleash Storm Shadow or whatever it's called.
You mean the same? Yeah, but well, did people not see the teardown? It was probably about 3 months ago. I saw it on Twitter, and the Russian engineers had basically got a fully intact Storm Shadow that they were busy taking to pieces.
Yeah, I remember that.
And learning its secrets and figuring out how to. I mean, the Russian electronic jamming is supposed to be next level. Yeah. And so, they want to fire some Storm Shadows deep into Russia. They've just invaded. They've tried to invade Kursk with German tanks again, and it didn't go well the first time.
And a British tank, but I get knocked out.
Yeah,
it was last seen burning at a crossroads.
Yeah, I mean the Russians they've destroyed a ridiculous amount of kit.
Mm-hmm.
They've killed a very large number of people, and more to the point is that the whoever ordered that offensive weakened the Ukrainian lines around the bit that really counts, which is in Donetsk, which is what's it called? There's a town that they're fighting over at the moment, and it's a logistics hub.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah. I
if
know
the
the one you
Russians
mean,
capture that, it's basically going to screw the entire Ukrainian logistics chain in Donbass.
yeah.
And so that Kursk incursion is going to go down in the annals of military history as one of the dumbest things that anyone's ever done. And unfortunately for the people involved in that operation, the Russians are treating it as a terrorist action, which means they're not taking any prisoners.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they are still taking some prisoners because they're not barbaric. But it's shoot first, ask questions later, and blow things up, and don't bother asking any questions because you can't ask questions of M1 Abrams.
Yeah.
And as I joked on Twitter the other day, pretty soon the Russians are going to have more NATO kit than NATO does.
Yeah, probably.
We're getting to that point. I mean, they've already got a bloody museum of NATO in Moscow.
Yeah,
where
I know.
Oh, that was so. The funniest thing about that was watching that knobhead from the BBC, Rosenberg,
Yeah.
losing his tiny little mind, walking around that thing, just about how wrong it is. And oh God, he's such a dickhead.
Yeah. Right. So shall we move on?
Yeah, no, let's definitely move on.
Number 4 for me is 1918.
Okay, why did you pick 1918?
I picked 1918 because of that thing called the Spanish flu. Right?
That wasn't actually flu.
Well, have we done the Spanish flu?
No, but we should.
Yeah, I think we maybe
Because
should
that-
as well, because
Well-
I think the Spanish flu needs further investigation, because it killed, allegedly, right, 675,000 people, right, out of a population of 105 million, which is way more than died in the actual First World War. And it reduced people, it didn't reduce people's life expectancy, it reduced the life expectancy average by 10 to 12 years because of the amount of young people that died. And this was the first time, right?
Mhm.
This was the first time that young people died from the flu, and not the very young, i.e. infants or the elderly. Because it seemed to have a particular penchant for attacking those in their late 20s, early 30s. Causing them to overproduce mucus and effectively drown in their own body fluids.
Yeah, I think that definitely deserves its own rabbit hole.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
we
think-
can do a bit of germ theory as well, because I've read some really interesting alternative explanations about what actually caused the Spanish flu, because it wasn't Spanish and it wasn't the flu.
And it kind of started in America.
Well, it started on U.S. Army bases after a round of
Let's not say anything about that.
well, then we better not do a Spanish flu.
Oh no, but
episode,
we'll
because
do a
we're gonna
Spanish
get
flu.
ourselves
We'll do a
nailed in the
Spanish.
face.
No, we'll do a Spanish flu episode. But well, there's ways and means around these things. But yeah, that's a matter of facts, right? That we can deal with there. You know.
Yeah, as if the dickhead censors ever cared about facts.
I know.
What the hell?
Anyway, that's that's my choice for number 4, 1918.
Well, it's interesting because my choice for number 4 was 1914.
Oh, that's the start of the First World War. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I class it as the start of the Second World War, because the First World War and the way that it ended and the way that the Dulles, because it was Alan Dulles and his brother. What was the brother's name? Alan and John. Yeah, John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles. And John Foster Dulles went on to have a very long and controversial and storied career at the US State Department. And Alan Dulles went on to get fired by Kennedy because of the Bay of Pigs. And they were essentially lawyers at Abercrombie and something, I think.
Say Abercrombie and Fitch.
No, it's not. But they were both partners in a US law firm.
Yeah.
That basically were the ones that drew up the armistice terms for Germany. and the crippling reparations, and effectively they made it inevitable that there was going to be another war. And I think that somehow that was all part of their plan. But I mean, the start of the world, even if you just look at World War One in itself, I mean, the mechanized slaughter and the senselessness of it, and just like hundreds of thousands of people dying for a little bit of dirt that is still freaking Belgium to this day. I mean, it's um, and I don't know. I think the only really good thing that came out of World War One was some of the poetry, because some of the war poetry by Wilfred Owen and people like that is just haunting. And I mean, Dulce et Decorum Est has haunted me since I read it the first time as a kid. And yeah, war is not something people should be
No.
clamoring for.
No, it certainly isn't. It certainly isn't.
And we seem to have a bit of that at the moment. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
because
1914.
it's easy to clamber. Clamber? What am I trying to say? Clamor.
Clamour.
It's easy to clamour for war when you're sitting on your butt in a nice warm office, sipping your cognac and smoking cigars. It's a bit
Well, it's like
different when you've got to run through the mud.
Yeah, it's like some of these US senators whose names I'm not going to mention, but have a record of draft dodging for the Vietnam War
Yeah.
and wanting, but they're quite happy to send other people's kids to die in a war, and they'll get exemptions for their own kids. And it's just, it's evil, and war is evil, and anyone that's banging the drums for war is either evil or stupid.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that there are situations where war is actually preferable. I mean, war is preferable to being invaded and having all your women and children killed, and war is preferable to genocide, for example. I mean, personally speaking, I think going to war to stop genocide is justifiable, if not necessary. And as awful as it is, there are situations where I think a nation state can consider war as a what is it? As a valid option on the table, but it should be the last resort.
Yeah.
And like Bismarck says, just never go to war with Russia, because it doesn't end well. It's never going to end well. You're always going to get your ass kicked, and anyone who tries it is stupid and dead.
I was watching a YouTube thing before the show started, and it was an American ex-platoon sergeant or something who obviously has some kind of show, and he fancies himself as some kind of intelligence expert, and he's just bigging up American capability left, right, and centre. You know. And
Is that Michael McFaul?
No, it wasn't. This was just a grunt from the. You know, he's probably seen time in Iraq or whatever, but
Yeah.
there's a completely different ballgame from fighting people when you have an overwhelming technical and numerical superiority in all the areas of warfare, whether it be air, land, and sea, compared to fighting a peer army. And this is the point I keep trying to get across. America has never faced a peer level army other than World War II. And you know, World War II wasn't cut and dried. You know, if Stalingrad had gone the other way, I pretty much think we'd all be wearing black. By Hugo Boss, of course.
Well, I mean, that's if the little Austrian was even going to invade. Well,
to be fair, when you look at all the information that came out of that, there's an overwhelming amount of information that he was trying to avoid a conflict with the UK. It wasn't on his. He didn't need to. It wasn't on his plan, and his actual aim wasn't world domination. He got forced into, or it appears that he may have been forced into a number of items that happened, and the same thing kind of happens with these other countries, like, you know, like possibly Russia, maybe, dare I say it?
Absolutely. I mean, if you see how much Putin has been demonized and
Yeah,
all
I
of the
know.
sorts of things that he's being accused of, most of which is absolute patent nonsense and verifiable nonsense if you're not listening to Western mainstream media.
Yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, the little Austrian with the funny moustache was a very bad guy, and there was a whole bunch of bad guys, but it wasn't just him because there was plenty of them.
Yeah.
And those sorts of movements, as we're kind of seeing, probably with groups like Antifa, who, I mean, they're like Nathan Brown shirts. I mean, it's that kind of mentality and that kind of attitude that gives rise to
So
that sort of
uh,
nastiness.
we haven't done Rudolf Hess, have we?
No,
Because
that's a
Rudolf
good
Hess,
rabbit hole.
yeah, Rudolf Hess parachuted into Scotland to try and
Mm.
have a meeting with the royal family. But yeah, I think we might do a rabbit hole on that one because that's a good one, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
Right?
So so we got Spanish flu and Rudolf Hess for future rabbit holes. We need to remember those.
Yeah, I'll take a note. I will take a note of that. I'll type it out right this very instant. Future rabbit holes. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and
No, we're not doing a rabbit hole on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Spaniards bullfighting.
Bullfighting?
No, Spanish flu. Spanish influenza. Yeah.
So where
Right.
are we at? I think we're on number 3 now.
We're on number 3, and I am going for 1492. Right?
1492. What was that?
1492.
That rings some bells.
Conquistadors.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So Europe arrives in South America, and within 300 years, from a variety of different reasons, but basically all because they landed in South America, you have reduced the population from 60 million to 4 through fighting, killing, disease, whatever. Yeah, so I think 1492 was a bad year to be a South American.
Yeah, it really was. But also, to be honest, I can't imagine that all of that death and destruction did the psyches and consciousnesses of the people who were doing the killing very much good either.
I don't know. See, the thing is, right, it depends. I suppose there's a lot. It depends how much thinking you do about things, and if life's brutish, short, and violent, right? You don't have a lot of time to think about it, and really, you're not going to be going off into great, levels of philosophy if your only thing is, where can I have sex? Where's my next food come from? And how can I avoid someone hitting me over the head? Yeah.
And also, if you've got someone like a priest or a king telling you to do
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
particularly if it's a priest telling you it's God's will that you go off and deliver the heathen savages unto him or whatever. People have used all sorts of different things to justify mass slaughter, but it doesn't make it any less right.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it any less right. And I'm not trying to excuse
any less
it.
Wrong, sorry, rather.
I'm not trying to excuse it. What I'm trying to say is, it's maybe an easier. It's easier to understand how it could happen. Yeah. And so, what have you got for number 3?
My number 3 is 9/11, 2001.
Oh.
Because that was the day that a lot of things changed. And I mean, it blows my mind that there are people who weren't even born then and who are now in their 20s and have no memory of what the world was like before 9/11 and before all of the terrorist legislation.
Yeah.
And just the evil that was kind of unleashed in the world on that day. And it's like an evil genie that's never been put back in its bottle, and it's just been rampaging around the world.
Yeah, it has.
And it impacted every single corner of the world, probably even Antarctica. And it's also resulted in really stupid things like the Americans unilaterally pulling out of the um, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF, which was one of the cornerstones of the Cold War that kept everyone safe. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, that was essentially the US putting missiles in Turkey and Germany and places like that, giving the Russians very little warning time. And you're then on a hair trigger. And what you want when you've got nukes is you want plenty of warning. You don't want to be in a situation where
Yeah.
either you or your enemy
Well,
is minutes away from
and
nuking your big cities.
that's why the Americans went apeshit over the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Mm. And what not many people know is that the reason that the Russians were sending nuclear missiles to Cuba is because the Americans had already put them in Turkey.
Yeah, exactly. Although that's quite interesting nowadays because Turkey's kind of pushing back against NATO at the moment, aren't they?
I mean, I could see a situation. It's like if, for example, NATO goes full on war with Russia, I can't see Turkey joining in with that. Frankly,
No, I don't think they would. I think they would. I think they'd throw the lot in with BRICS.
And I think if it kicks off seriously, and if that happens, don't forget that Turkey's is the second largest army in NATO.
In the world,
so,
yeah, more
so
or less.
if
Other than China, yeah.
And they've got a lot of troops and a lot of hardware, and if they decide that they're no longer in NATO, NATO's basically done, militarily speaking.
I've been saying for a while that NATO is on the way out, and it's only a question of time because nobody wants to pay for it. That's the thing, They demand too much money, and
It's pointless.
It's pointless.
I mean, I was saying this in the bloody 90s when the Berlin Wall came down and the Warsaw Pact disbanded. I was fully expecting them to disband NATO as well. And one of the things that I saw back then as a worrying sign for the future was the fact that NATO wasn't disbanded. And the thing, when there's no Warsaw Pact, you took away NATO's enemy. And NATO, to keep existing, has to find itself an enemy. And if you need to find an enemy, you just make one up. It's much easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know. State of the world. So that was my number 3. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is 1945.
1945. Okay.
Yeah, not 1943, which was probably the worst year of the war, but 1945, because 1945 we did something that ushered in a whole new era, didn't we? And we did something that we really didn't need to do because the war was already won by the time we dropped it. And that was dropping 2 nuclear weapons on Japan.
Yeah.
And that ushered in a completely new era in world politics. And that's why I have picked 1945.
I think that's a good choice. Yeah, I mean, I was weighing that one up, but my number 2 is 1963, which is the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
Which personally, I think, apart from just the tragedy of it, I mean, the direction that he was going to take the world in if he lived, and it was the reason I think that they killed him ultimately. I think we would have a much, much different, a much nicer world if the vision that Kennedy had for peace. It was his American University address, the peace speech they call it, and I've listened to it loads of times, and every single time I do it gives me goosebumps because it's one of the most. I mean, it apart from being an absolutely outstanding bit of oratory in terms of a speech, just the message and what his vision for the future would have been so much of a nicer world than the one that we got. And it was, it's the powerful forces that want the war and make the money from the war and the control and all of the death and destruction that were the ones that got rid of him. So
yeah, and I'll address the chat briefly here. We as the West, Harold, it's quite straightforward. You know, just because you didn't have any part in it, doesn't mean that the West didn't do it. We, the West, and you, if you still live in the West and adhere to mainly Western values, then you have to say you are part of the West. Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. I'm not suggesting that you are guilty, and I, for
it's not
one,
a bad thing.
Yeah, I, for one, abhor this call for reparations for things that have been done in the past. There is no need for this. Bad things happened in the past, yes. We should learn from them, yes. Do we have to pay people who aren't the people that these things affected, No,
And
I
also
don't think we do.
No, and also the ones who really made the money. I mean, the average person in the United Kingdom during the slave trading period, the average person in Europe, like Holland, England, wherever,
of course,
didn't benefit from slavery at all. It was the rich assholes who actually made all the money and who are still making all the money.
Yeah.
And because slavery hasn't died. I mean, if people think slavery's finished, then they're idiots.
Yeah. Well, it's like, if people think Liz Truss crashed the economy,
they're idiots.
Then you're an idiot. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot.
I mean, actually, the thing with that is that she must have the program that she was proposing, and I guess probably her attitude must have really scared some important rich assholes. It
was the most Tory-like budget that had been proposed for many a year, for decades even, and it would have G'd up the economy, no problem. It would have taken everything in the right direction. But I am convinced that little shit Sunak got on the phone to his banking buddies and said, bring things down. He stabbed her in the back because his nose was out of joint because he got beat by a woman at a national vote. And then what happens? He gets installed without any... How does that happen? How do you have all these... Remember, we had hustings, we had votes. The party went through this whole rigmarole, right, of selecting the next leader. And then when she was ousted for, because she got stabbed in the back and shafted rudely and without lube from behind, and then Sunak just gets installed. We'll just take Sunak, I mean, that's just, it beggars belief that anyone could not see what was going on there. I mean, really, it's so freaking obvious.
Yeah. And now we've got someone even worse than either of those two. Yay! Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yay for us.
He had a sky dish on that pharmacy, though.
Oh, I do kind of miss Roland a little bit, I have to say, because...
tell you what, mate, come back, all is forgiven. I thought he was a lying little shit, and he came from it. I don't know how to say this without sounding, maybe, but no, I mean, he came from a culture that really doesn't recognise lying, and I don't think, I think it was like water off a duck's back for him to say something and believe it, because I think they just, lying's acceptable, but
I don't think it's cultural though.
It is. That is culture. That's endemic in India. That is cultural. Have you dealt with Indians as a as an IT project manager? Have you dealt with?
We don't outsource.
Yeah, right. Wow. I could tell you horror stories, mate. Horror stories. They will say anything to your face if they think you want to hear that. right? And then you'll go back to them the next day but you said this, and they would go, no, not I didn't say that. And you'd be like, I wrote it down. You said it would be ready then. No, it won't be ready then, sir. It'll take another 2 weeks. And it's like, and this is the problem with banks, because it's banks that use them all the time. Oh no, they can't take criticism, and they don't like dealing with women. They don't like taking orders or direction from women. And of course, that doesn't go down well either, because banks are full of women now, right? Because of DEI. So you've got, I mean, as a project manager in a bank, you are literally, you're not herding cats, right? You're like trying to even spot the sign of a cat. Never mind, it's like it's like trying to decipher things by going through cat shit. That's what it's like.
Oh dear.
Sorry, and that might sound misogynistic. It might sound even a tad of the R word, but I'm only calling it as it is because that's exactly what it's like. It's like, and it is endemic in their culture. Did you ever? There used to be a program called Karachi Cops, and
I never saw that, but I never really watched it.
They used to torture prisoners on TV. Real live fly on the wall documentary, and they're literally torturing people on TV. They've got them strung from the ceiling and they're beating them with canes. And the guy's going, yes, I have to do this, sorry, but not tell me the truth. Boom, boom. That was mainstream TV. Mainstream TV.
What the fuck? Oh, please. Right. Let's move on. I don't want to talk about torture.
Right. Well, my number one is actually one of yours. It was your number 7. 1346.
Okay.
Bubonic plague and the massive. I mean, it just about wiped out Europe. I mean, God knows how many people died. Yeah, I think from a point of view of a really bad year, it nearly wiped out Europe. Yeah, it lasted what, 6 years? At least 6 years. Yeah, and there wasn't many positives coming out of it at all.
No, but it was also, I mean, that was as we were discussing before, the 1300s seemed like a really shit century to be born into. You have to feel sorry for anyone born anywhere during that 100-year period, because it was majorly shit.
Yeah.
If you actually managed to survive beyond the age of about 30. I don't know what the average life expectancy was in the 1300s. Let's find out. Let's ask a little.
Right. So this is one of these things that you find is quite strange, or I think is quite strange, because the average life expectancy is based on the what age someone is when they die, right? And when you walk around old graveyards, which I have sometimes been known to do, right? Okay. But when you walk around old graveyards and look at gravestones, you see quite a remarkable thing in that most people either die really young or just live to into their 80s.
Well, it's mostly the really young. It's when
that's exactly it. It's infant death that brings down the life expectancy. So when you look back there's a graveyard round the corner here, and you walk through it, and there's people there from 1700s, and it's like they were like 83, 86, when they died. But then there are people who are 6 months, and there's whole families that have got like 4 kids that are all dead by the age of 2, that kind of thing. So babies died very early, and that brought down the life expectancy.
Well, just going back to what was life expectancy in the 1300s, there's 3 different ones that I've found. For English aristocrats, life expectancy among adult males 21 plus years old was around 45 years old during the 1300s.
Yeah.
due to the devastating impact of the Black Death.
Yeah.
For ducal, I don't know what the hell a ducal family is. Between 1330 and 1479, average life expectancy was only 24 years for men and 33 years for women.
That sounds like someone who works.
And in contrast, for medieval English landowners who survived to age 25, life expectancy was around 50 years.
Yeah, and the thing is, these are averages, so you're going to have, the bell curve is skewed here because the actual quantities of the very young dying is going to be big, and it's really going to screw up the life expectancy because all you have to do is look at the graveyards and the graves and see the ages of people that died, and they're all 70, 80, just like just like people die these days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what's your number one?
2020.
Yeah, I deliberately avoided it because I think it was engineered.
Well, I think it was engineered, but I'm not talking about the thing itself.
Yeah.
We're going to be careful about discussing.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the worst years because of the effect that it had on people. I mean, the number of suicides, the number of marriage breakups. I mean, I still talk to people like who I encounter on Twitter, and some of their stories are utterly heartbreaking about being ostracized from family and having kids that won't talk to them and being denied access to grandchildren and watching elderly parents being oft in care homes and and it was global as well. I mean, the amount of suffering that it caused and is still causing, and now they're trying to do it again with this latest load of nonsense. Yeah, I mean, we agreed that we agreed we weren't going to cover 2024 because that probably would have been top of. I mean, because we're only 7 months into 2024, so we can't really say it's the worst year, but we should maybe review this show next year or something to see if we wanted to slot 2024 in there.
Yeah, why not? We should make it an annual thing.
That's a good idea.
Top 10 worst years, and because you've made me think about other things. You've made me think about other things and maybe years that I would have plucked out of that. Some of mine I'll stick with. Like, I think my first three were actually quite good choices, and maybe I'd bring them further down the menu.
Yeah, I think maybe I might have slotted in 1929.
Yeah.
Somewhere, but actually, on the whole, I'm happy with the 10 that I chose.
That's cool. That's cool. What do you people out there think? What do you think? What do you think is your worst years in top 10 terms? Is 2020 up there? Yeah, it's quite interesting. Quite interesting to find out what you think about this in this format. Yeah.
Yes, I know, John, 7 months, not 8. Bite me. Honestly. Pedant. 1949 NATO creation, says Ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, NATO's creation was.
You could actually go back to United Nations, couldn't you?
Yeah, but then I mean the original
League of Nations.
Of the fact. Well, yeah, I mean if the surface reasons for it are all noble, but both organizations suffered from having nefarious assholes at kind of organizing the whole thing. And I mean, the UN is basically global government, but all of that whole, I don't know, the world government plan seems to be falling to pieces a little bit because of Russia, because you can't have a world government with a sovereign Russia. And the whole point of world government is to destroy the nation state and unify everything under these regional blocks like the EU. and then from there, ultimately, world government, which would be like authoritarian tyranny if the current path of the United
Well,
Kingdom is anything to go by.
it'd be communism, wouldn't it, really? And I mean, they might dress it up under a different name, but effectively it would be communism. We'd all be either on UBI or doing menial tasks. Would be we wouldn't be
So
allowed.
you've
I mean,
heard.
it'd be like China. You wouldn't be allowed to step out of line, or you'd be your social credit would be ruined. I mean, I mean,
You
this
just
is.
know the dear leader wants that.
Oh
You
yeah, of
can,
course he does.
you can just because all of this riots nonsense. I bet they're going to come out with a plan. They're going to say that to prevent future riots and maintain security in the country, we will have to have a digital ID, and then that's slowly going to be tied into everything, so that if
You
you
won't be
don't,
able to get online without it. You know.
yeah, they'll want you to tie it into your Twitter account because I mean
Yeah.
they're already. It's like when you verify your Twitter account, you still got to give them government ID.
Yeah, I mean, it'll
Um,
be like District 9. Pretty soon we'll be stealing cat food out of the local corner shop, you know, and
mm,
that'll be all you can eat.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's well for the people who live in rural areas. At least they've got options of growing their own food and stuff. But the whole 15-minute city just it sounds dreadful,
Yeah.
and they want to herd everyone into these tiny areas. Um, just so that we're not using up resources. I'm so sick of eugenicist idiots. I really am.
Mhm.
Because an awful lot of this is like there's too many people in the world. Yeah, have you flown over the planet recently and realized how much empty freaking space there is
Oh,
everywhere?
yeah. I mean, the planet is empty. I mean, 8 billion people's nothing.
Mm.
And
And it's
the problem's not going to be overpopulation. The problem's going to be population collapse because we're quickly approaching it. You know, if
yeah,
you just all you need to do, people, is go out there and look at how the population is stacking up because it is
well,
going to
it's replacement
collapse.
rate.
Yeah,
The population collapse can be measured by replacement rate, and every single country the replacement rate is 2.1, which is
hmm
the number of babies that women have to maintain the current population. And so each woman has to have two babies to cover her and her partner, plus a little bit of one for people who can't have kids or choose not to or whatever.
yeah.
And most of Europe, in fact, most of the world,
Oh,
apart from India, I think India is the only one that's even close to the replacement rate. But I mean, Japan is catastrophic. Japan's population collapse is scary.
yeah. And the only thing that's propping up Japan just now is the fact that the people live longer there than most other places, and they still keep working. You know,
Mm.
because Japan's a really homogenous society. They don't want they don't like strangers, shall we just say, you know, in
Gaijin,
Japan. Yeah. So
and
yeah.
that's but it's yeah. And at the same time, you've still got a lot of these rich assholes like Bill Gates saying there's too many people on the planet, and they're still having to reduce the population. And then we've got the you know whats that are doing you know which to you know who, which aren't very good either.
Hold on. You need to call me slow down or something. Right. What
The you know what from 2021
right. Oh, all right. Yeah, right.
doing you know
Got you. Right.
which,
Got you now. Right. Okay. Thanks.
yeah,
Sorry.
them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to be a responsible
No,
podcaster.
well done. Well done. You done. You did well there, mate. You did well. Better than I would have done. Oh.
So that was the 10. Has anyone in the chat come up with any other ones?
I don't. Well, Julie said 2001, and Ray had said 1949. 2001. Actually, and thinking back about it, 2001 was a pretty damn good choice. Ed. And
2001 was not
because
a good. Just yeah.
cause you know what I think really made 2001 stand out is nobody, myself included, nobody saw it coming. Really, you
Me
know,
neither.
it just came out of nowhere. And the thing is, since then we've had our spidey senses honed, you know,
Mm.
But up until then, I didn't even know spidey senses existed.
Yeah, I mean, it sparked off about 7 years worth of research on my part. And
Yeah.
blogging and reading untold books and
And
just
I've
trying to
changed.
make sense of it.
Yeah, and
Sorry?
I've changed my mind on like a number of occasions because
Absolutely.
it's hard to believe that
But
a government could do that. You know?
Absolutely. And I mean, to be honest, keeping an open mind in this day and age is a survival skill, and having a critical mind is a survival skill. Asking lots of questions is a survival skill, and not trusting your government is a survival skill.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh yeah, and Tony Fauci, don't trust him ever. Not ever. Even if he tells you the sky is blue, just stick your head out of the window just to double check.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. But yeah, so that was we've done I think, did we have any overlap? I think the only one where we got close was 1914, 18.
1914, 18, 1346.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was an overlap.
19. What else we got? Well, I've got 45 and you'd 47. That's pretty close. So I don't think we were far apart. And you had 48 as well, did you? You had 47 and 48.
You covered. Yeah, you went a bit further back than me.
Yeah, I did.
Quite considerably.
48 BC.
That's what, 1980 years.
Well, I think it played okay.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was fun. I enjoyed it, actually. We should do these top tens about other things as well, because I think it's quite. I don't know what the audience thought, but I think it's quite a fun format.
Yeah, I quite liked it. And the thing is,
and then maybe next time, like, do some slides or something just to make it a little bit more interesting than having to stare at our ugly mugs for an hour.
Yeah, but I think people listen anyway. William Cooper Ride a Pale Horse mystery. I don't know what that is. Yeah, has he? Have you heard of that?
It's ringing some bells, but very distant, small ones. So no, I'm not sure.
What else we got? Starmer's father wasn't a toolmaker. He was a toolmaker factory owner, I believe.
My dad was a toolmaker.
Factory owner.
And he made a tool.
Yeah.
Now that tool is gonna fascism the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Honestly, people getting locked up for, and Lucy, I'm not sure if you're a follower of her.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, and being remanded as well for an okay, it was an inappropriate tweet.
Was she remanded?
Yeah, no, she's still in the nick.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, they remanded her until September. It's
that is freaking ridiculous.
It's vindictive,
why is she under remand? Where's the danger? Where's the danger to the public?
Well, exactly.
This is crazy. Yeah. I mean, seriously, either the US or Russia have to seriously entertain, what would you call it, asylum claims now from people that live in Britain.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them do already. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Even David Clues from UNN has said he's staying out of the country for the time being.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've got the same brain dead idiots who voted for him are all cheering it on, and it's fine when you've got authoritarians being that you agree with in power, but once they get that power, it's like Matthias Desmet says, the mass formation always ends up eating its own.
Mm-hmm.
And authoritarian tyrannies always end up eating their own. Mm-hmm. They inevitably will come after their own followers.
I'm actually thinking that reincarnation might be a real thing. And what we have Joseph Stalin back amongst us.
Keir Stalin, yeah, man.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a kind of similar look.
Well, especially, I mean, there's a brilliant account. The name is Two Tier Keir, but I think it's an @wef_11 or something like that. But it basically, someone that's just done a parody of Starmer, and he's brilliant because he's doing face mashes with Kim Jong Un. And so
I've seen that.
he's parodying the dear leader. it's absolutely
But
brilliant.
yeah.
Oh, you gotta love Twitter. Some of those parody accounts are hilarious.
And I mean, North Korea's opening its borders to tourism again.
Yeah.
It's beginning to look desirable.
Yeah, no, they've built this whole stretch of hotels on the beach that no North Koreans go to, but they're all intended for Russian and Chinese, probably Iranian tourists. It's just, and Kim Jong Un is absolutely loving it. And I mean,
well, he's got pals, hasn't he? I mean, he never had any. I mean, it was always Kim Nepals, but now he's got pals.
Yeah,
he'll be like, I've
absolutely.
got pals. I have pals.
I know it's not so lonely anymore. I wonder if they've got a WhatsApp group.
You've seen this, bro.
Yeah, you could just imagine they're sending each other links of things like the opening ceremony of the Olympics and stuff. And it's like, oh my God, have you seen this?
Yeah.
Oh dear, hilarious.
Jesus Christ. I cannot believe the state the country's got into in 40 days. 40 freaking days.
Oh, we've got another 4+ years of this bullshit. I mean,
it's freaking ridiculous.
I just perish to think what. I mean, Rishi said he was going to ruin the country in 100 days, and he's still got what, 60?
Well, that's Rishi. He was always prone to exaggeration.
But he's a little shit. But he's a little rat-faced shitbag too, because he knew what was coming, and he got out of Dodge, and he's sunning himself in California with his missus.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So he's not even having to deal with any of this. He's a coward, and he knew he knew what was going to be required of the prime minister, and he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas
Keir was just so desperate for power that he grabbed. And the thing is, I don't understand the people that are, I don't understand all these lefties that are saying he's a great prime minister and he's really got a grip on it. When you see him speaking, it's like he can't think 3 words ahead of what he's saying.
He's not got a grip on anything. He's provoking
terrible.
War with a nuclear armed superpower that's about 1,000 times bigger than us and could swat us like a bug without breaking a sweat. He's not trying to sort out the country's problems. He's just locking up the people complaining about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And getting completely tyrannical on working class people who have got an issue with the way that they see their country going. And Two-Tier Keir doesn't give a shit about any of that. I mean, anyone that says he's doing a good job needs to give their head a wobble.
Yeah, they do. Oh, I mean, grief.
But yeah, we'll start ranting about politics if we're not careful.
I mean, it's not even a question of where do you start, it's a question of where do you stop.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just the direction that he could go and the speed it could go in is absolutely frightening, and I don't understand why it has to go in this direction. I mean, what the hell is the problem with actually sorting out some of the issues that the country has got in a non-authoritarian fascist way?
Because that won't turn the country communist. I seriously think the man is intending to actually make us a communist country. I really do. I think this is it. I think this is going to be the single party. If he can get his way, we will do it. In the name of safety and security, he'll end up doing away with elections and we will become a communist freaking country.
Well, the thing is, I think you're giving him too much credit. I'm not sure he's actually got that much power. I don't think any of those top-level politicians do.
It depends on who's backing him, doesn't it?
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, he's the puppet, and whoever's behind him, are the ones that want this nefarious agenda, and it's all tied into the Fabian Society and World Government and the Trilateral Commission and all of that, because he's fully on board. And I mean, Keir is one of those people. I don't think he's being blackmailed. I think he's doing it because he actually believes it.
Oh yeah, I've no doubt about it. I mean, the man is mentally ill. He really does believe it. He's part of a cult, and that cult is the cult of two-tier Keir. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's just going to get worse
from
this point on, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, and with that, I think we've got to take a step back, because we're going to end up saying things that we'll regret.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and should you have enjoyed this show at all, dear viewer, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. You want to. And should you have any coffers to spare, throw them our way if you can, but only if you can. Ko-fi.com, as you see at the bottom of the screen there. If you'd made a donation during the podcast, or even right at this very instant, you'd be able to type in a message in a suitably attractive but robotic voice would read your message out.
Maybe if you got a really sexy voice, it might encourage.
It has got a sexy voice.
Well, robotic. You're not selling it very much.
Have you not heard that?
No,
you must have heard. Hold on.
Right. Probably have.
I can run a test. Here we go. Are you ready? Now remember, there will be an air horn first.
From someone tipped $1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000.
No, it's happening.
Oh, did you not hear it?
No, that's fine, because I'm not. That's all right.
So she said, from someone tipped $1,000,000,000,000,003.
Oh dear. But yeah, it's been a fun show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been a fun show for me too. And as they say, it's been great for you.
You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better. Creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.